Ahuja, who is the chairman of the board of LightSquared. In 2007, Sanjiv founded Agare, the company delivering affordable, genuine wireless broadband to underserved customers developed in developing markets such as Bangladesh and Pakistan. Sanjiv was also the founder and chairman of Eaton Telecom. And from 2004 to 2007, Sanjiv was chief executive officer of Orange. So now he, as you may likely know, LightSquared has faced some very significant challenges over the last year, and especially in the last several months. And in brief, the FCC in February decided to revoke the support of LightSquared's planned LTE network. And since then, there have been numerous twists and turns in the road in the story. And RCA continues to support and encourage the FCC to consider the enormous benefits that the LightSquared proposed network bring to the American public. And now here to bring us up to date and share his thoughts and views on connecting everybody in the 4G world, please welcome our guest and key speaker of LightSquared, Chairman Sanjiv Ahuja.
Good morning. And Steve, RCA, and all of you, thanks for inviting me here today. And Doug, that was wonderful. What you walked us through. Well done. Thank you. And Bob as well. Network vision ought to be there for all of us for the sake of the industry, and cricket success is very critical to RCA. But first, I want to know if you have the most recent news on LightSquared. And no, I don't mean the public notice issued by the FCC or the unwinding of our agreement with Sprint. What I do mean is our public announcement in conjunction with our filing with the FCC that LightSquared is not going to go away. And that we are going to continue to fight to launch our integrated nationwide 4G LTE network. Why are we continuing to push ahead? It's just simply too important an issue to abandon. There's too much at stake here, too much at stake for all of us here at this conference, too much at stake for LightSquared, but most importantly, it's too much at stake for American consumer. So we are not going to abandon this fight, and we're going to continue, and we will be successful. Why is it so important? Because major industry concerns and events that are happening are creating a perfect storm for the wireless industry. A well-documented spectrum shortage, and Doug talked about that, an insatiable growing demand for wireless data, a lack of competition in this country, and the need for policy that supports investment, increased competition, innovation, and strategy for rural America. Let me begin by discussing how the US finds itself in the predicament of having skyrocketing demand and a severe lack of resources to meet it. Over the 4 decades since the first mobile phone call was made, competition and the spectrum necessary to make it possible have revolutionized not just the mobile industry, but the lives of every single American and billions of people around the world. Many of us can remember cell phones when all they did was voice calls. And as Doug mentioned, in 1999, there were no smartphones. And we all remember that. But those days are long gone. Consumer demand for wireless service and products is rapidly accelerating. Doug mentioned the Cisco study, so let me just say that. Another piece from that, average smartphone usage tripled in 2011. And between 2011 and 2016, global wireless data demand will grow 18 times globally than what it is today. So what we find ourselves is in the midst of the next great evolution of this industry. What we are seeing today is the first generation of mobile devices that are designed for the broadband network. We don't know where this will lead us. But we know one thing: it will definitely change consumer behavior and expectations in ways that we cannot even envision today. Think back to the days of dial-up and remember how broadband changed the experience on home PCs. Broadband transformed information, communication, entertainment, and business forever in the fixed line communication. At first, we saw every institution, whether it's Sears, McDonald's, Walmart, just add a .com to their name. And then came the Amazons, the Googles, the eBays, and others that enabled customers across the United States and in many cases around the world to use technology to make purchases, sell, trade, and literally transform how millions and billions of people shop and make a living and drive both the US and the global economy. For example, eBay expects that its customers to buy and sell more than 8 billion of merchandise in 2012. And PayPal expects to see 7 billion in mobile payment volume just in 2012. And then combine the power of e-commerce with our ever-expanding use of social media in the wireless broadband world. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. A couple of years ago, many of us dismissed this phenomena as a way of letting the world know what you had for lunch or breakfast that day. But you know, our jokes have stopped. Today, this is the foundation of the next generation of e-commerce. In many ways, this helped create the revolution in Egypt, Libya, and now in Syria. Over the past several years, what we have seen take place is e-commerce combined with social media networking to fuel the explosive demand for mobile broadband. Every day, we are witnessing the convergence of new applications that enable more social networking and e-commerce. There are hundreds of thousands of new mobile apps that are getting created every year by many of you in this room and your teams back home. But we are still at the starting point of the transformation that is ahead of us. The tablets that so many of you are using in this room, let's remember that this is the first generation of tablets. You remember Apple IIe, or you remember IBM 3270 terminals. 10 years from now, that's what these tablets will look like. We don't know what consumers and businesses will do with these technologies. We don't know what consumers and businesses will do with mobile broadband. We do know, standing here today, that this innovation, specifically in this country, is threatened by the spectrum crunch that we all know is real and looming. Here are some staggering figures contained in analyst and industry reports included on the Mobile Thinking website. At the end of 2011, there are 6 billion mobile subscribers around the world, with some 323 million in the US. In 2011, there were 1.2 billion mobile web users globally. More than 8 trillion text messages were sent in 2011. Smartphone penetration is 30% and growing rapidly. And the average amount of traffic on smartphones is growing exponentially. And that's just phones. The tablet market ended at around 70 million units at the end of last year, more than half of those just in North America. Today, we are moving from smartphones to smart devices. Earlier this month, when Apple launched the new iPad, 3 million iPads were sold just in the first 4 days of the launch. And analysts are predicting that by the end of this year, 66 million will be sold. And these are astonishing numbers that will lead us to more innovative uses, including entertainment, gaming, medical, remote business communications, field operations, and on and on and on. We also know that smartphone usage is 24 times that of a regular voice phone. And the tablets use 122 times more data than a traditional voice device. And all it is doing is taxing already scarce spectrum in the United States. We do not have enough capacity to accommodate this growth. We have too many devices and too little spectrum in use to support them. The result is that we are on track to run out of network capacity over the next couple years. The onslaught of new devices and applications, which so many of you have created and continue to create, fueled by faster networks, have created booming demand that leaves us at a critical tipping point for our industry. We as a nation are simply not ready to meet this growing gap between supply and demand. Our future economic growth, innovation, job creation are all at stake here. And let us be clear, we are not grappling with this crisis in a vacuum. The spectrum shortage is a problem that can be solved, and other industrialized nations and industrializing nations are both stepping up to solve this. I'll give you an example of Germany. There are 4 major operators. The smallest of the 4 operators has today twice as much spectrum as Verizon does. And they're using it to build mobile broadband, 4G LTE in Germany. And that's just an example, and I can go on and on and on. Now, let's address the pressing issue that is very near and dear to most of us here today, this morning. The needs of rural providers that are not being met by the incumbent duopoly. We all face a lack of options for access, discriminating prices by these 2 incumbents, and a very real lack of competitive market options. There's an alarming fact that is included in the report titled Economic Impact of Wireless Broadband in Rural America. That is, states, rural America comprises the largest portion of unserved and underserved broadband population. Of more than 7 million housing units identified as either unserved or underserved by the National Broadband Plan, a plurality is located in what the Census Bureau classifies as rural counties that each and every one of you is very familiar with. The report goes on to say this is no surprise since the broadband deployment plans of national carriers do not prioritize rural fixed or mobile broadband capital investment. In these territories, lower consumer density and our populations that are depressed socioeconomically do not result in attractive economics of network deployment by these 2 incumbents. And for those of you in this room that focus on rural connectivity, I believe that's most of us here, I cite the example of the collapse of Open Range Communications. This past October, Open Range, the privately held rural broadband provider that was present in more than a dozen states, filed for bankruptcy and is now being liquidated. The company was dealt a blow, first by the FCC, when it suspended Globalstar's ATC authority. LightSquared also has had an agreement in place with Open Range. but we haven't received the authority to launch our own network, leaving Open Range without spectrum to roll out and serve rural broadband communities. I don't need to preach it to this audience that the dominant duopoly limits competition, that results in fewer options for you as rural providers to offer broadband capacity and connectivity to your customers, and leading to higher prices, higher barriers to entry, less innovation, and impact on your business's bottom line and average American consumer's pocketbook. The looming spectrum crunch and addressing the needs of the underserved rural market will need to be solved at all levels, with different spectrum strategies, with different network architectures, with different set of devices, with different ways to distribute network, and with different business models. Today, not tomorrow, our industry must continue to fight and push for new solutions, new partnerships, and economic incentives to deal with this challenge that faces us all. The strategy must be endorsed and supported by both the industry and the government. The strategy must encourage broadband wireless coverage that extends into all locations of this nation and not just the points of presence decided by the duopoly. The only way to do this is to focus on not just bringing more spectrum to market, but bringing it in ways that encourage multiple retail competitors. And Doug talked about the wholesale model. The FCC made a wonderful start by requiring LightSquared to deploy a nationwide wholesale network at an unprecedented pace. It should be encouraged to see that effort through and not change its mind mid-course. This strategy must also foster rural competition and partnerships that support leasing spectrum for rural network builds, as well as roaming reciprocal agreements with low-frequency spectrum operators that encourages development of broadband services. And Doug also talked about that earlier. And lastly, this strategy must promote partnerships that allow rural providers to offer very competitive broadband coverage as compared to the duopoly. However, this will not happen in the United States without the right policy in place. A policy that encourages investment and continued innovation. A policy that supports increased national competition by leveling the playing field for all providers so that lower prices and greater service variety and greater choices are available to all Americans across the nation. I mentioned at the outset that LightSquared has a vested interest in solving this problem of broadband capacity to rural America. This goes beyond the $4 billion we have already invested. We are poised today to deploy valuable spectrum to deliver the much-needed capacity to this industry. But to us, this is not just about providing spectrum. It is about how we bring wireless broadband to more people, more Americans. Usually when demand outpaces supply, people focus on the high end. But LightSquared is working to turn wireless connectivity into a pure utility, to commoditize it, to force the prices down. We believe average American consumers, prices should drop by as much as 50% once LightSquared's network is operational. Existing wireless carriers, given their business model, are vertically integrated, managing every single component of the value chain themselves, from the network to device subsidies to consumer acquisition and care. However, LightSquared's business model is anchored on providing network access purely on a wholesale basis. We will sell our network through our retail distribution partners, who in turn will resell the service under their own brand, under your own brand, your customers. And our wholesale model also means that we will never compete with our customers for the ultimate consumer's business. And we are commoditizing the network access in another way. Just as the electric company does not care what you plug into your outlets, we are building an open network where any device, any application, and any company that wants to use our network are able to do so. We are working with companies of all sizes all across the country. And we are poised to fuel the democratization of wireless broadband. In his recent statement, just 2 weeks ago, this organization's president and CEO strongly urged the FCC to consider the enormous benefits that LightSquared's proposed network would bring to rural America, especially in those rural communities that are hard to reach. He went on to urge the Commission to provide LightSquared the flexibility it needs to bring the benefits of high-speed mobile broadband to more Americans. I want to personally applaud and thank my good friend Steve. Steve, thank you very much for your foresight, your support. That has been absolutely unwavering as we are going through these challenges with the regulators. LightSquared is uniquely positioned and is working to connect America, create economic opportunities, and drive job growth, even in areas that have traditionally been on the wrong side of the digital divide. All the more reason why LightSquared is not going away. This is a very important moment for all of us working in this industry and working on these important issues. And I remain absolutely confident that if we continue to increase competition, capacity, connectivity, and the reach, the years ahead will transform the technology industry and landscape that we cannot even imagine today, all across America, be it urban or rural. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Sanjiv, thank you. Thank you very much. We greatly appreciate your taking the time to join us today. And I would like you to know that we're grateful for your support, for your membership, for your sponsorship. And we all wish you well as you do battle in Washington, D.C. with the FCC. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our last speaker, and last but not least by any means, I'm pleased to introduce Sandy Motley, who is the Vice President of Sales for U.S. wireless accounts at Alcatel-Lucent, one of our pinnacle sponsors. In that role, Sandy is responsible for sales of the entire Alcatel-Lucent product portfolio, as well as the company's services to over 20 U.S. service providers. Sandy has over 25 years of experience in global telecom industry. During this time, she has accumulated a fairly impressive, diverse portfolio of responsibilities, including business strategy and portfolio management, product management, business operations, systems architecture, network support, product marketing, just to name a few. Just recently, we were very delighted to welcome Sandy to RCA's Board of Directors and as a member of the Executive Committee. So ladies and gentlemen, please let's give it up for Sandy, and she's going to tell us about LTE deployment.
Great. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. And thank you to the RCA for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. We heard some very exciting presentations from Bob and from Doug and from Rajiv about their businesses and about LTE in general. So I'm going to emphasize some of the points that they've made with Destination 4G arriving at the very best of times. So if I could describe our industry, to use some words from Charles Dickens, I would say that this is a tale of two situations. So we are in certainly the very best of times and also in the worst of times. So let me explain some of that and what I mean by that. Our industry is very exciting. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things going on very quickly and at a phenomenal pace. The technology that you all provide to your users, to your subscribers, and your customers is changing the world and is changing the lives of those individuals. They have access to information anywhere, anytime, and many, many new applications are being developed every day. We see mobile gaming, there's mobile opportunities for social networking, and a whole slew of new applications, as I said, that are being developed every single day. And we see the future will provide lots of opportunity for connectivity in different ways. We talk about connected homes, connected cars, and machine-to-machine will provide other opportunities in other areas that we haven't even thought of. In addition, the wireless industry and the wireless business is a fundamental part of many economies around the world, and is making incredible contributions to those economies. So with all of this advancement, with the speed of deployment of these technologies, it's certainly a very exciting time, and it's very exciting business for all of us to be in. But let me talk a little bit about the other side of that, and we've heard some of these comments from some of the other speakers today. Competition is brutal, and I would argue that it is more difficult today than it's been in this industry over the past number of years. As I said, competition is fierce. We also have spectrum constraints, as my colleagues spoke about. There are certainly some operators that have a lot more spectrum than others, but any way you look at it, spectrum is a scarce commodity. And as we move to 4G, it is certainly difficult to build 4G networks on top of 3G networks and on top of 2G networks, all within the same spectrum constraints. So that spectrum needs to be managed, and it needs to be managed carefully, and it certainly ties to some of the difficulty that we have in this industry and in this business. Also, we have limited resources, quite obvious, but we have limited resources, whether it be deployment, whether it be managing your network, or whether it be your CapEx budgets. And certainly the competition that we're seeing in the market is driving even more difficulty with these limited resources and with the limited dollars that we have to spend and to support the networks. So certainly making it very difficult for the competitive carriers in this space. And we've heard a number of people talk about the growing demand this morning for data. Let me say that some of the predictions are that 70% of our data traffic in 2014 will be video. And we know that video certainly eats up a lot of capacity and a lot of capabilities on your network. Also, Doug talked about in the next 4 to 5 years, we'll see 10 times the data capacity growth. I've seen figures and numbers that talk about 30 times, and I know over the presentations today and tomorrow in some of the breakout sessions, I'm hearing numbers over the next 5 to 10 years of 70-fold. So, certainly that makes it very difficult. It puts a lot of stress on your networks, and it puts a lot of crunch on what you need to do and the equipment that you need to deploy and the things that you need to do to service your customers. So, what is the solution for this? And I say that we can't afford not to move to 4G. And certainly this is not a new concept. This is not a new idea. Many of the competitive carriers are in the process of thinking and working through their plans for LTE. Some have networks, and some are in the process of deploying today. But let me talk to some of the numbers, and let me talk to some of the expectations of your customers and of your consumers. As I said, your customers today are looking for the capabilities, whether it be latency or whether it be video support or some of the added features and some of the new ways of being able to view videos and the quality of experience that they could achieve. Your customers are looking for that solution. What we've seen in terms of statistics is that over the past year, we've seen 8,000% growth in LTE. So if we look at the number of consumers, that were using LTE at the end of 2010. There was about 70,000 LTE users. And if we compare that to the end of 2011, there was 5.6 million. So granted, the numbers are still relatively small, but those are some examples of how this technology is becoming more mainstream and how I believe the time is now for all of us to move ahead and to move together with LTE. In addition, the predictions are that over the next 2 years, we'll see about 300% growth in LTE subscribers. And you could argue that that number is somewhat conservative. And lastly, the point that I want to make around some statistics with LTE is the new iPad. So as you know, that was recently announced a few weeks ago, and that product and that does indeed have LTE capability as well as Wi-Fi roaming. So again, another example that the technology is moving mainstream and that we will see a lot of growth, and your customers are expecting to see LTE. In addition, in terms of benefits for you, LTE offers the ability for new revenue as you move forward. And certainly that's a very important piece, and the expectation is that it will be at a lower total cost of ownership. So we can't afford not to move ahead, and I argue that we need to move ahead quickly to build out this technology and also to support your customers and consumers. However, I do understand that many of the competitive carriers are moving and going down a different path to 4G than some of the larger operators. So let me explain what I mean a little bit there. Some of the unique requirements that competitive carriers have, for example, is spectrum optimization. And what do I mean by that? Many of you don't have the ability for additional spectrum or to have a total overlay network for your LTE solutions. So the industry needs to support you in providing ways that you could optimize your network so that you can clear some of your existing spectrum and provide 4G on that same spectrum. And there is available features and technology to support that. On the CDMA side, there's 1X Advanced, and on the 3GPP side, there's various techniques in terms of modulation and combining within that spectrum. So there is today some opportunities and some abilities to help you get to LTE on the path that you're on. In addition, 3G and 4G interoperability is a requirement for you. As I said, if you don't have the ability to have a total overlay network for 4G, you're going to need to have a handoff as your consumers move from hotspot 4G areas into 3G networks. There needs to be a handoff, a data handoff from 3G to 4G. And again, those capabilities and features are available for you today and allow you to move into that space. And certainly last but not least is new devices. And we're starting to see tier 1 handset providers provide handsets to the competitive carrier team. We've seen Apple phones. The iPhone is much more predominant now. We're seeing that there are many other carriers that are able to use that device and are able to procure that device. So that's certainly one example. And there's other tier 1 handset vendors who are also providing handsets to the competitive carrier organizations. But also there's tier 2 vendors out there who are defining their spectrum needs and their device requirements to allow you to use your current spectrum for LTE. It's not just 700 megahertz. There's many devices that are supported in other technology bands. So again, I believe the industry is now in a place to support you better so that you can move to LTE. But certainly having an LTE network and an LTE system is not enough. And I suggest that innovation is our call to action, and it's our call to action on technology, in business models, and also in working together. So let me talk a little bit more about those areas. What you see in front of you is the Alcatel-Lucent Light Radio. So this is a component for LTE. It's a small cell, which allows you to reach some of those capacity growth numbers that we talked about earlier. It's a very small component that you can augment your macro system with, again, to more efficiently use spectrum and for you to be able to provide the capacity requirements that are needed as we move into this growing data demand space. In addition, Wi-Fi offload and carrier-grade Wi-Fi offload is also a critical technology and a component that's needed for us to be successful and for us to move forward. And lastly, on the technology side, we need to develop new features and new applications for all of you. And it's not just about over-the-top providers. You know, all of you need to be gaining the revenue and the ability to be able to support your business case by taking advantage of the applications and by you getting revenue from those sources and a new stream of revenue for you. In terms of business models, let me talk a little bit about that. And certainly RCA is an example of creating a special and unique and innovative business model. For GSM handsets, they have a technology organization that was able to look across all of the RCA operators and the organization, pool quantities, and define requirements specifically for RCA. And if you're a member of the organization, you're able to benefit from that. And again, that's a great example of a business model and a partnership that's helping in the industry. And I know RCA is looking to achieve some of those same goals and some of those same results for LTE. So, you know, look forward to that. And it's certainly very important and very critical for the industry and for the business. Another example of business model, Doug Hutchinson had spoke to that earlier, and that is in terms of supporting and sharing networks, whether it's a hosted EPC, RAN sharing, and this can be provided, or these kinds of solutions can be provided from vendors, or they can be provided from operators, or a combination of the two. And the advantages to that certainly gets you to LTE much faster and does so at a much lower cost. So there's certainly some great benefits there. And also in terms of business models, there's revenue sharing views. If you want to look at applications or having a vendor host a router for you or a platform to be able to include your applications or unique applications for you and your customers. That's another example of taking a lower risk and being able to partner and share some of that risk with vendors and yet still provide some unique applications and some unique ways for you to gain revenue and to move forward in the business and have a more successful business case. And then lastly, working together. We've heard some comments, and I'll just emphasize some of the things that have been brought up already today about important ways to work together. And I believe for LTE and for 4G, it's more important than ever for us to all work together in supporting the needs, again, because of the increased competition, the increased complexity, and the fact that things are different with 4G. And one of the examples of working together is with roaming. So we've heard a bit about that today already. But you know, I suggest that roaming for 4G is different than roaming for 3G. It's more difficult. There's much more spectrum bands that are included here. So there needs to be more planning, need to look at things a little bit ahead of time, more so than perhaps with 3G. And we need to develop those partnerships and those solutions for roaming and common device needs as well. And then the last example of working together is certainly the RCA organization. They've done a lot of things moving forward and speaking the voice of many of you in Washington. And they've made a lot of progress and success there. And obviously there's a lot of new membership that's included in the organization today. And that gives all the more strength and all the more reason for this organization to band together and to work together on many fronts and in many areas and in many ways. And certainly another example of ways of working together and even unique business models is with the government. As we know, there's 20 megahertz of spectrum available in the areas of public safety, and the government has asked operators to help them build out that network, to operate that network, and to support their needs and as an organization. So this is once in a lifetime opportunity for all of you and for all of us to get involved in that. And perhaps it will provide devices and better availability of devices as we move forward there. And I want to also mention that a lot of these areas, whether it be technology and applications, it's not just about the larger guys, and it's not just the larger guys, as I said, that are moving to LTE and are moving quickly. There was a few press announcements that were made today. Cross Wireless, who's branded as Sprocket, they also have announced their intentions of moving to LTE just recently. And then a second company that was announced today as well is PVT, and they're branded as Fuego, and they're moving to LTE in the New Mexico area. So again, some smaller companies that are looking for the applications and the new technologies to support, the rural areas of their business and of their companies and within their regions of the world. So with that, as I said, we're living the best and the worst of two situations. As I said, to borrow some words from Charles Dickens. However, our story is not completely written, and the ending has not been decided. And I believe with the right partnering, with the right innovation, technology, and legislation, we can certainly move into what I'll call the very best of times ahead with LTE. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you in those areas. And I thank you very much for your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, let's give it up one more time for all the speakers. Bob, Doug, Sanjiv, and Sandy. And welcome to RCA, Sandy. We appreciate it. As we conclude our general session, we've covered a lot of territory here in 2 short hours. Thank you for your patience. Now we're going to invite you to join a break. We're going to have a break in between, and it's going to be sponsored by Ericsson, our friends at Ericsson. If you see Craig Stein out there, thank him for your cup of coffee or drink. But get fortified, because here at 10:30, we're going to have 4 breakout sessions, which will be presented along the 4 educational tracks: business, finance, technical, marketing, consumer service, and the category we call Wild Card, which hopefully will be interesting this year. We will reconvene at 11:30 in the exhibit hall for lunch, sponsored by Interop Technologies. And of course, while you're there, please visit the 100 the 100 supplier vendor booths that are there to help you in all your endeavors to grow and provide new technologies. After lunch, there will be 3 more breakout sessions. Hopefully, you'll be able to participate in those. And they will be interspersed with breaks sponsored by Ericsson, another of our Pinnacle sponsors. So then at 5:15 today, we'll return to the exhibit hall for the appreciation reception, Carrier's appreciation reception, which will be sponsored by Clear Sky Technologies and Telecommunication Systems. So go and enjoy yourself, get fortified. I hope you have a great day. See you tonight. Bye-bye.